Dave has become an award-winning journalist writing for the Detroit Metro Times, the Detroit Free Press, and ESPN. He has also served as a volunteer groundskeeper at the Tiger Stadium site in Detroit, as well as historic Hamtramck Stadium from the Negro Leagues. In 2017, Dave delivered the Shrine Ceremony's keynote address. Now he returns here to present the Shrine plaque to Ron, this new shared neighborhood that they are enjoying in the Baseball Reliquary. Welcome.
Thank you, Joe. Greetings, my fellow reliquarians. The moment of truth has finally come. Again, my name is Dave Mesrey. It's great to be back here again with all of you on Induction Day, induction into the Baseball Reliquary Shrine of the Eternals. Our final inductee today really needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyhow. In the early 70s, when I was just a kid on the east side of Detroit, my father used to take me to ball games every now and then at Tiger Stadium. And like many of you here today, I became a baseball fan at an early age. When Ron LeFlore joined my hometown Detroit Tigers in the summer of 1974, he moved into a house on Somerset Street, just one street over from me. And my old buddy Tom Sherry, who's here with us today, all the way from the east side of Detroit, there he is. Boy, Tom grew up just 3 doors down from Ron. So we've got a nice contingent of Detroiters here today to celebrate Ron's induction, and it's just so great to be here to present this to Ron. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't really piece everything together until much later about, I had some idea that, the Tigers center fielder lived in our neighborhood. And, all these years later, coming to know his story, and we all know his story, I still can't believe it. It's unbelievable. Truth really is stranger than fiction. Mm-hmm. So you all know the story. It's incredible, it's improbable, it's impossible. But, I like to think it could only happen in Detroit. In the winter of 1970, a 21-year-old Ron LeFlore and 2 of his buddies robbed a bar on the east side of Detroit called Dee's Bar. And of course, they got busted. Ron was sentenced to 5 to 15 years in a state prison in Jackson, Michigan, where he served time alongside a political prisoner by the name of John Sinclair. Now, Sinclair was there because he had sold 2 joints to an undercover cop, and they gave him 10 for 2. 10 years for 2 joints. But lucky for John Sinclair, a guy by the name of John Lennon heard about his story, and he came to Ann Arbor, Michigan to play a benefit concert for John Sinclair with the likes of Bob Seger and Stevie Wonder. And shortly after that rally, Sinclair was released from prison, and many years later he would be seen as the man in Michigan who finally legalized marijuana. So if Ron was ever going to get out of the joint, he was going to need a miracle too. And sure as shit, he got one. Now, Ron hadn't played any organized baseball growing up, but to blow off a little steam, he decided to join the prison baseball team. And his first real game was in Jackson, Michigan on May the 18th, 1971. And as you know, just 3 short years later, he was the starting center fielder for his hometown Detroit Tigers. It's the stuff of legend, and 50 years later, I still can't believe it. But this shit really happened. Believe it or not. So, the night that Mark the Bird Fidrich, another fellow reliquarian, member of the Shrine of the Eternals, and former Detroit Tiger, the night that the Bird beat Billy Martin and the New York Yankees at Tiger Stadium on Monday Night Baseball, June 28, 1976, that was a night we'll never forget as Detroiters. If you were there in person, if you saw it on television, man, if you've never seen it, just look it up on YouTube, especially the ninth inning. The Birds ruled Detroit that summer, the bicentennial summer of 1976. And Ron was there. Ron was there the whole season in center field with a bird's eye view of it all, that magic Detroit summer. And later that summer, Ron was voted to the American League All-Star team as its starting center fielder, where he played in Philadelphia alongside his teammates Rusty Staub, another member of the Shrine of the Eternals, and the one and only Mark the Bird Goodrich. So, now Ron's story is in large part the result of the relationship between a downtown Detroit bar owner and a man who was doing time in the state penitentiary alongside Ron. And his name was Jimmy Kerala. Now, Kerala was in the joint for extortion, and he just happened to be the prison's baseball coach. And after watching Ron play for just a few short weeks, Kerala realized this was no regular inmate. This guy was a world-class athlete. And Jimmy Kerala recognized that. So, in the unlikeliest of scenarios, on April 11, 1973, Jimmy Kerala sits down in Jackson State Prison and he writes a letter to his buddy Jimmy Boutsikaris, the co-owner of a sports bar in downtown Detroit called the Lindell AC. In this letter, Kerala urged Boutsikaris to tell his friend about Ron LeFlore. Now, Boutsikaris' friend, who happened to be the best man at his wedding, was none other than Detroit Tigers manager Billy Martin. And when Billy heard about this, he was intrigued, but who would have thought he'd actually follow through on this tip from a prison baseball coach? Now, there was no YouTube back then. Billy Martin didn't see any video of Ron LeFlore playing ball. He didn't have any photos. He just had the word of Jimmy Kerala, who was in Jackson State Prison for extortion. A few short weeks later, on May the 23rd, 1973, at the behest of Jimmy Kerala, prisoner number 128149, Jimmy Boutsikaris, the owner of the Lindell AC, and his friend, Detroit Tigers manager Billy Martin, hopped in a car along with Detroit Tigers announcer Ernie Harwell, and they drove about an hour west of Detroit to watch Ron and his teammates play a ball game in the state penitentiary in Jackson, Michigan. Who would have thunk it? But their game that day was rained out. But they got to meet Ron, and Billy said to him, if you get a weekend furlough or anything, come on back to Detroit and we'll give you a workout. And he did. Just a short time after that, Ron was granted a one-day furlough so he could travel back home to Detroit and work out for his hometown Detroit Tigers. Needless to say, they were impressed.
Why not?
Right? So, upon his release from prison later that year, in the unlikeliest of scenarios, Ron signed a minor league contract with the Detroit Tigers. If I'm not mistaken, he got a $6,000 signing bonus and $500 a week. They sent him to play A-ball in Clinton, Iowa, where his manager was none other than Jim Leland. Still, what were his chances? What were the chances that he'd actually make it out of Clinton, Iowa, to the major leagues? I would say they were about 1 in a million. So, after only about a year in the Tigers farm system, and just a week before Richard Nixon resigned as President of the United States, Ron was promoted to the Tigers and made his big league debut on August the 1st, 1974, before some 9,000 fans at Milwaukee's County Stadium. After 2 seasons of ups and downs with the Tigers, Ron had a breakout year in 1976, starting the season with an incredible 30-game hitting streak and earning himself a starting spot on the American League All-Star team. Soon there was a book about Ron. It was titled Breakouts, From Prison to the Big Leagues. And that was followed by a made-for-TV movie starring LeVar Burton called 1 in a Million, the Ron LeFlore story. And I would be remiss if I did not mention, we have here with us today a special guest all the way down from the Bay Area. Author Adam Hennig is here with us today, and he's got a new biography of Ron LeFlore, which is coming out next April, and that book is titled Baseball's Outcast, the story of Ron LeFlore. So keep your eyes out for that. Adam Hennig, he's right over here, folks. So as you all know, Ron played more than 5 seasons with the Tigers before being traded away to the Montreal Expos after the 1979 season. Ron was so beloved by Detroiters of all stripes that one group of fans, they were so pissed when the Tigers traded him to Montreal, and this is no urban myth, by the way, I may or may not be acquainted with these gentlemen. One night, these guys, after the trade, sending Ron LeFlore to the Montreal Expos for Dan Schatzeder, these guys were so pissed that under cover of darkness, they went to this little island in the Detroit River called Belle Isle. And that's where they knew of a riding stable, and they procured a big plastic bag of horse manure. And under cover of darkness, these guys, again, I have no idea who they are, but the word on the street is, the next thing they did, under cover of darkness, those guys literally dumped a load of horse manure on the sidewalk outside the team's executive offices at Tiger Stadium. It was their way of saying this was a horseshit trade. So the following season in 1980, Ron made his mark on the National League, racking up an incredible 97 stolen bases for the Expos. Just edging out, on the last day of the season, just edging out Pittsburgh's Omar Moreno for the National League stolen base title. And during those final years of the final days of the 1980 season, Ron was running the bases with a broken arm. Ron had injured his arm the last week of the season, but his manager, I believe it was Dick Williams, he still wanted to use Ron as a pinch runner that final week of the season. And he did. And Ron got in just enough times and stole just enough bases with a broken arm to edge out Omar Moreno for the National League stolen base title. So over his 9-year Major League career, Ron racked up an incredible 455 stolen bases. And boy, the Detroit fans love to chant, "Run, Ron, run." His story's like no others, a real Detroit redemption story. He truly is 1 in a million. Now, as for that handwritten letter that I referred to earlier from Jimmy Kerala in Jackson State Prison to Jimmy Boutsikaris, the owner of a downtown Detroit bar called the Lindell AC, I have in my hand a copy of that letter. and I'd like to read it for you now. Here is a copy of the envelope. It comes from James Corolla, prisoner number 128149. P.O. Box E, Jackson, Michigan 49204. It's addressed to Jimmy Boutsikaris, care of the Lindell AC Bar, 1310 Cass Avenue, Detroit, Michigan. And here is that letter. The letter that got Ron LeFlore out of prison to the major leagues. From James Corolla to Jimmy Boutsikaris and everybody at the Lindell AC Bar. This letter was composed in Jackson State Prison on April the 11th, 1973, and according to the postmark on this envelope, the letter arrived at the Lindell AC the following day, Thursday, April 12th, 1973. I like to call it a letter from James to the apostles. And it reads like this. Hi, Jim. Hello, cuz. How's everything going at the bar these days? Good as usual, I hope. I'm writing this letter with respect to the information given you earlier about a black ball player in here. The kid really has a lot of potential, Jim, or believe me, I wouldn't bother you with it. First, I'll give you a little information on him. He's 24 years old, 6 feet tall, and runs the 100 in 9.4 seconds. He has an exceptionally strong arm and plenty of power, as you'll see just by looking at him. He's very powerfully built and weighs around 215 pounds. As a matter of fact, he'd make a hell of a football player. Seriously though, Jim, I wouldn't bother you with this if I didn't think the kid had any talent. This is nothing to me, but you know how much I love sports and what a Detroit fan I am. And I just hate to see his talents wasted. He made parole, but they took away his good time, which means he don't get out until around the end of July. If it's at all possible to maybe send a scout down here to watch him play, which is every weekend, and if he likes him enough, I'm sure a letter from Billy or someone in the organization can get him out much earlier. Like I said, Jim, I think this kid is well worth it, believe me. As for me, I go to the parole board in July of '74. I'm a little too old for baseball, but I'm pitching softball fast pitch, and I can still hold my own. Well, Jim, the letter concludes, I appreciate your time, and if you can do something, I'm sure you won't be sorry. If you can send me a card or a short letter, tell me what you have in mind. I can also call you if you want me to, so just let me know. The athletic director's name here is Kermit Smith. Just ask for him or me. As for the kid's name is Ron LeFlore.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the newest member of the Baseball Reliquary Shrine of the Eternals, the one and only Ron LeFlore.